Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Be sure to check out Dragon Shield for all of the best accessories to protect your decks. TCG Player for cards at great prices while supporting local game stores. And Patreon, where you get awesome benefits for your direct support. 2022 is already shaping up to be an awesome year. Starting next year, we are bringing back our Mox Pearl tier. If you ever wanted to be on an episode, consider signing up to this tier and show off your CEDH skills. We also have a new tier, Mox Ruby. If you ever wanted to showcase a CEDH deck on our channel, sign up to this tier. We will consult with you one-on-one and pilot it in an episode. In January, our Discord webcam CEDH League returns. We have a revamped structure with multiple winners and awesome new prizes. In February, we are hosting a CEDH tournament on our Discord as well. It will be 100% proxy friendly and the prizes are going to be awesome. To participate in any of these events, all you have to do is sign up to our Patreon. You get all kinds of other great benefits as well. Thank you all very much for your support. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Ryan piloting Codie, Vociferous Codex. This deck seeks to cast and activate Codie as soon as possible, find and cast ad nauseum, and close out the game. Ryan's opening hand contains a Force of Negation, Abrupt Decay, Mox Diamond, Void Snare, Dispel, Sandstone Needle, and his London Mulligan is a Crop Rotation. Next, we have Mike piloting the partner pair of Tevesh, ZACK, Doom of Fools, and Thrasios, Triton Hero. This Sultai Reanimator deck looks to cheat out Razaketh the Foul-Blooded and sacrifice Thralls to fetch up a combo and close out the game. Mike's opening hand contains a Pact of Negation, Time Twister, Wooded Foothills, Gemstone Caverns, Opposition Agent, Vampiric Tutor, and a Razaketh the Foul-Blooded. After that, we have ZACK piloting the partner pair of Tymna the Weaver and Kraum, Ludovic's Opus. This deck, which ZACK swears is not Freeze Thief, is about 6 cards different from Freeze Thief. This deck seeks to control the board through a high amount of interaction while drawing cards through the commanders. ZACK's opening hand contains a Mnemonic Betrayal, Tainted Pact, Cyclonic Rift, Counterbalance, Mox Diamond, Misty Rainforest, and a Steam Vents. Finally, we have Cal piloting Prosper, Tome-Bound. This deck seeks to cast and resolve a number of game-ending cards such as Doomsday while gaining value through its commander. Cal's opening hand contains a Luxury Suite, Gemstone Caverns, Rite of Flame, Deflecting Swat, Dragon's Rage Channeler, Cabal Therapy, and a Snow-Covered Swamp. Without further ado, let's play some pretty polite poetic Pursuits of Paradox. Ryan wins the Scalding Hot Cocoa Chugging contest and gets to start us off. But Mike and Cal have pre-game actions. Mike puts a Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Pact of Negation. Cal also puts a Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Cabal Therapy. Ryan draws a card for turn and plays a Sandstone Needle into play tapped. He passes. At the end of Ryan's turn, Mike casts a turn 0 Vampiric Tutor. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. Mike draws a card for turn and plays a Wooded Foothills. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts a turn 1 Time Twister. In response, Ryan casts Force of Negation, exiling a blue card from his hand. Time Twister is countered and exiled, and Mike passes the turn. ZACK draws and casts Mox Diamond, discarding Steam Vents. He plays a Misty Rainforest. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. ZACK then casts Counterbalance. The table groans, and ZACK ends his turn. Cal draws and plays a Luxury Suite. He casts Dragon's Rage Channeler. Counterbalance triggers, and ZACK reveals a Sensei's Divining Top, countering the Channeler. Everyone but Cal cheers, and he gives the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Bayou onto the battlefield. He casts its commander, Codie, Vociferous Codex. He ships the turn. During his upkeep, Mike loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and plays a Windswept Heath. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Tropical Island onto the battlefield. He then cracks Wooded Foothills, pays a life, and fetches up a Bayou onto the battlefield. He casts his commander, Thrasios, Triton Hero. He gives the turn to ZACK. ZACK draws and plays a Wooded Foothills. He casts Sensei's Divining Top. With Counterbalance, Sensei's Top, and a fetch land all on his side, he now has a very oppressive way of controlling the board. ZACK passes. Cal draws and plays a Swamp. He casts a Soul Ring. Counterbalance triggers, and ZACK reveals a command tower. Cal casts his commander, Prosper, Tome-Bound. Cal passes, Prosper triggers, and Cal exiles Mana Crypt off of the top of his library. Ryan draws and knows ZACK has a land on top of his library. Unfortunately, he cannot cast any 0 mana value spells right now, so without taking any actions, he ends his turn. During his upkeep, Mike loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and casts his other commander, Tevesh, ZACK, Doom of Fools. Counterbalance triggers, and ZACK responds by activating his top, looking at and rearranging the top 3. ZACK then chooses not to reveal off of Counterbalance. Tevesh resolves, and Mike activates Tevesh, creating 2 Thralls. Mike gives the turn to ZACK. At the end of Mike's turn, ZACK cracks his Wooded Foothills, pays a life, and fetches up a volcanic island onto the battlefield. Still in the end step, ZACK activates Top, looking at the top 3 and rearranging. ZACK draws and casts his commander, Tymna the Weaver. ZACK ships his turn. Cal draws and casts Mana Crypt from exile. Prosper triggers and Cal creates a treasure. Cal plays a Blood Crypt into play tapped. Cal passes, Prosper triggers, and Cal exiles Jessica's Will. Ryan draws and passes. During his upkeep, Mike wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and activates Tevesh, sacrificing a Thrall and drawing 2 cards. He plays a Watery Grave into play untapped, paying 2 life. He passes the turn. During his upkeep, ZACK activates his Top, looking at the top 3 and rearranging. He draws and casts a Mox Opal. He moves to combat and attacks Tevesh Zot with Tymna. Mike blocks with Thrasios, and ZACK gains 2 life. ZACK ends the turn. During his upkeep, Cal wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and casts a Mox Amber. He casts Jessica's Will from exile using both modes targeting Mike. Prosper triggers and Cal creates a treasure. Counterbalance triggers and ZACK reveals a Fierce Guardianship countering Jessica's Will. Cal plays a Gemstone Mine. Cal passes, Prosper triggers, and Cal exiles Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. Ryan draws, feels the pain of ZACK's counterbalance, and gives the turn to Mike. At the end of Ryan's turn, Mike activates Thrasios, scrying 1 and revealing a Demonic Consultation into his hand. During his upkeep, Mike loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and activates Tevesh, creating 2 Thralls. He casts a Diabolic Intent, sacrificing a Thrall. Counterbalance triggers, and ZACK chooses not to reveal. Mike fetches up a card into his hand and then ends his turn. At the end of Mike's turn, ZACK casts Cyclonic Rift, bouncing Codie to Ryan's hand. Still in the end step, ZACK activates Top, rearranging the top 3. ZACK draws and moves to combat. He attacks Ryan with Tymna. Ryan takes it, and ZACK gains 2 life. In his second main phase, he pays a life and draws a card through Tymna. ZACK gives the turn to Cal. During his upkeep, Cal loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and plays an Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth from exile. Prosper triggers, and Cal creates a treasure. Cal passes, Prosper triggers again, and Cal exiles a Mox Opal. Ryan draws and casts Lion's Eye Diamond. Counterbalance triggers, and ZACK reveals Pact of Negation, countering LED. Ryan casts Carpet of Flowers. Counterbalance triggers, and in response, ZACK activates Top, rearranging the top 3. He then reveals a Flusterstorm, countering Carpet of Flowers. With nothing left to do, Ryan ships the turn. At the end of Ryan's turn, Mike activates Thrasios, scrying 1 and revealing a Scalding Tarn, putting it onto the battlefield tapped. During his upkeep, Mike wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and activates Tevesh, creating 2 Thralls. Mike passes. At the end of Mike's turn, ZACK activates Top, rearranging the top 3. Then Mike discards the hand size. ZACK draws and moves to combat. He attacks Ryan with Tymna. Ryan takes it, and ZACK gains 2 life. In his second main phase, he pays a life and draws a card through Tymna. ZACK casts Dark Ritual. He uses the mana to cast Mnemonic Betrayal. In response, Mike casts Abrupt Decay, targeting Counterbalance. Counterbalance is destroyed, and with Mnemonic Betrayal still on the stack, Mike casts Fierce Guardianship for its alternate cost, targeting Mnemonic Betrayal. In response, ZACK casts a Fierce Guardianship of his own for its alternate cost, targeting Mike's Guardianship. The table hopes someone has a response, and Cal responds by casting Deflecting Swat for its alternate cost, targeting ZACK's Fierce Guardianship. In response, ZACK casts Pact of Negation, targeting Deflecting Swat. With nothing else, Pact counters Swat, Fierce counters Fierce, and Mnemonic Betrayal resolves. Cal, Mike, and Ryan exile their graveyards, and Mnemonic Betrayal is exiled. ZACK casts Lion's Eye Diamond. He casts Vampiric Tutor. In response, Mike flashes in an Opposition Agent. Agent resolves, and with Vampiric Tutor still on the stack, ZACK casts Abrupt Decay, targeting Opposition Agent. In response, Ryan pays 2 life to cast Mental Misstep, targeting Vampiric Tutor. In response, ZACK casts Fierce Guardianship from exile for its alternate cost, targeting Mental Misstep. Still in response, Mike cracks Scalding Tarn, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. Then Opposition Agent is destroyed, and finally Vampiric Tutor resolves. ZACK fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. ZACK cracks LED, discarding his hand and adding 3 black. He pays 2 life to cast Jataxian Probe, targeting Mike. He looks at Mike's hand and draws a card. He casts Cabal Ritual with Threshold, adding 5 black. He follows up with Jessica's Will, targeting Ryan. The table contemplates for a while, and then Mike responds by casting Demonic Consultation. Consultation resolves, Mike names Flusterstorm, and exiles until he finds it and puts it into his hand. Mike then casts Flusterstorm with all copies targeting Jessica's Will. It resolves, and Jessica's Will is countered. Next, ZACK casts Diabolic Intent, sacrificing Tymna as an additional cost. He fetches up a card into his hand. He casts a Sol Ring. After a long turn and nothing else to play, ZACK ships the turn to Cal. At the end of ZACK's turn, all cards exiled with Mnemonic Betrayal return to their owner's graveyards. During his upkeep, Cal wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and plays an Emergent Zone. He casts Mox Opal from exile. Prosper triggers and Cal creates a treasure. He casts Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter. It resolves, and as Tybalt enters the battlefield, Cal gets an emblem. Cal activates Tybalt's first ability. In response, ZACK activates Top, rearranging the top 3 cards. Tybalt's ability resolves, and Tybalt exiles Scalding Tarn, Polluted Delta, Verdant Catacombs, and a Talisman of Progress. He moves to combat and attacks Tevesh with Prosper. Mike blocks with a Throw. Cal passes and Prosper triggers. Then Cal exiles Diabolic Intent. Ryan draws and sacrifices Sandstone Needle to cast Dockside Extortionist. In response, ZACK activates his Top, drawing a card and putting Top on top of his library. Also in response, Cal sacrifices all of his treasures. Then Cal cracks his Emergence Zone, giving his spells flash until end of turn. Cal casts Diabolic Intent, sacrificing Prosper as an additional cost. He fetches up a card into his hand. He casts Rite of Flame. He casts Ad Nauseam. The table sighs as they spent so much interaction earlier on ZACK. It resolves, and Cal reveals an Underworld Breach, Shatter Skull Smashing, Exotic Orchard, Abrade, Swamp, Defense Grid, Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, Bloodstained Mire, Demonic Tutor, Twin Flame, Vampiric Tutor, Dualcaster Mage, Mizzix's Mastery, Mayhem Devil, Opposition Agent, Peat Bog, Dockside Extortionist, and a Feed the Swarm, deciding to stop there. Cal casts a Dockside Extortionist of his own, creating 5 treasures. He casts Underworld Breach. He casts Demonic Tutor, fetching a card into his hand. He casts a Lion's Eye Diamond. He cracks LED, discarding his hand and adding 3 black. He escapes LED from his graveyard. He cracks it, adding 3 red. He escapes Demonic Tutor from his graveyard, fetching up a card into his hand. He casts Cloudstone Curio. He escapes LED again. He cracks it for 3 red. He escapes Dragon's Rage Channeler. Cloudstone Curio triggers, bouncing Dockside to his hand. Cal casts Dockside, creating 5 more treasures. Cloudstone triggers, bouncing Dragon's Rage Channeler to his hand. He presents a loop of bouncing and recasting Dockside and Channeler through Cloudstone Curio. With each iteration, he creates more and more treasures. Cal escapes Mayhem Devil from his graveyard and sacrifices enough treasures to kill the table, and Cal wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, what a game! Congrats to Cal on his very interesting win. There were so many twists and turns throughout this game. Who could have seen an Underworld Breach on another player's turn? The most valuable card in tonight's game goes to Emergence Zone. This unassuming land can be so powerful when put to good use. Ryan was about to do a lot of broken things, but Cal decided to do them on top of Ryan's spell instead. Remember, Cal won on Ryan's turn in response to Ryan's Dockside on the stack. People always underestimate this land until they lose to it on their own turn against it. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.